So if you've been around AI lately, you've definitely heard Jevons Paradox. And today we're going to break down completely what it means, where it came from, why history rhymes, and why ultimately, if you're an employee, business owner, why AI might not just take over your business or job just yet due to this important concept. Now, more importantly, it came from the 1860s. And when I say rhymes, keep that in mind because in the 1860s, they were worried about coal. Okay, we're worried about AI right now. They're worried about coal. And basically, it powered the Industrial Revolution, and England's economy was completely dependent on it. And now leaders were worried it was going to run out. Jevons Paradox comes from the economist William Stanley Jevons. And ultimately, Jevons' thinking was this during that important time. With greater efficiency, you get more for less, more power out of every lump of coal. And that effectively lowers the cost of coal energy. You can now burn your furnace or run your factory's machines longer for cheaper. And lower prices means higher demand. And again, at that time, there was a lot of disruption taking place, just like right now with AI again. And so when he looked around him, he saw factories being built, infrastructure getting erected, and new coal-powered inventions radically changing his society. When he saw engines and furnaces getting more efficient and thus cheaper to run, he saw that as sparking an economic explosion of demand. Kind of sounds like what we're seeing right now with AI, right? AI is drastically disrupting pretty much every industry at this point. It is definitely bringing on new capabilities, new productivity unlocks. There are obviously multiple narratives at once. Sure, it's not everything that everyone promised. Yes, but there is still tremendous use cases with AI. And right now, just like this period in time, a lot of infrastructure is being built and a lot of money is being poured into this industry. And so ultimately the thesis is, the idea is that making things like cars and appliances more energy efficient creates a rebound effect. When you make a machine more energy efficient, it effectively lowers the cost of using it. When stuff gets cheaper, people tend to use or consume more of it. So if we look at this Mind Studio article, there's a few things happening that take place, right? So existing buyers use more of it because it's cheaper per unit, as we're currently seeing with AI, right? As these models get cheaper and cheaper, more people get access to it. Number two, new buyers enter who couldn't afford it before. New use cases emerge that weren't economically viable at the old price. So for instance, there are some companies now coming out and saying AI does cost a lot. And, we are now debating, should we continue down this road because we're spending a tremendous amount and we're not necessarily seeing the productivity gains, which completely makes sense. But in a few years' time, when it becomes super, super cheap, they're going to be like, well, we can actually have access to it anyways because it's just so cheap. Demand expands across all three channels, often enough to overwhelm any efficiency savings. Okay, that's also very important. Back in the 1860s, right, as steam engines improved and burned fuel more efficiently, Jevons expected total coal consumption to fall. Just like right now with AI, right? As it kind of disrupts a lot of markets, we're thinking, wow, AI is going to take over a bunch of jobs. It's going to do all this other stuff that essentially is just going to replace humans. We're actually seeing the opposite. Mark Andreessen was just on the Rogan podcast, and he basically said right now there's an explosion of coding taking place because now what we're seeing is that it's more efficient and it's cheaper. So again, it gets into the hands of more people and more people just use it because now it's so much cheaper, right? Makes sense. So you would think AI is just going to do it all, but now there's an excess demand of it. And so that's how potentially more jobs are going to be created, just like with the steam engine here. So Jevons Paradox states efficiency gains in resource use tend to increase, not decrease total consumption of that resource. And again, like we already stated, as the cost of AI-powered cognition drops and it's dropping fast, many assume this will shrink demand for human intellectual work, but Jevons Paradox suggests the opposite is more likely. And if we go back to the four factors here, specifically number three, there's going to be new use cases that emerge that weren't economically viable at the old price, right? Because again, hiring humans was a lot of money, but now you could very well see a demand and new things appear that we didn't even think of because of prior constraints. And so again, we've seen this throughout history, and with the printing press, for instance, we saw it with Gutenberg's press dramatically reduce the cost of producing written text. And you'd think, oh my goodness, we're all going to lose jobs. However, what actually happened is that literacy spread, new genres emerged, and demand for writers and editors exploded. And again, you have new industries forming around this stuff. And again, you can't you don't know what you don't know. So it's hard to think right now with AI specifically, what new jobs will be formed, X, Y, and Z, and how this will kind of mature. And when you're in it, obviously it seems a lot scarier. 50 years from now, hindsight's 2020, and you'd be like, well, obviously it formed in this way. But right now, being in it, obviously it seems very turbulent. So spreadsheets made it a lot easier to do this type of work. One person with a spreadsheet can do the work of a small team doing manual calculations. Instead, the number of accounting and financial analysis jobs grew. And that's why now you're starting to see more coders, more engineers get hired, because again, that bottleneck basically is disappearing. And so now you can actually hire more people to get more output because it's a lot cheaper. ATMs, automated teller machines, arrived in the 1970s and seemed like a clear case of machines replacing workers, bank tellers specifically. But the number of bank tellers in the US actually increased after ATMs became widespread. Why? Because ATMs made it cheaper to run a branch. So banks opened more branches, right? Email. We have seen this played over and over again. So for instance, more tasks are being run, not fewer. New categories of work are emerging. The quality bar is rising. And so we have all these new things taking place. 50 years from now, it's going to make a lot of sense. But right now, while you're in it, it's a little scary. And so that's essentially what Jevons Paradox is and how it applies to AI. If you found value, subscribe, stay human, and I'll see you in the next one.